Hey dancers, welcome back to my channel. I'm Julie here at Ballet, where we help adult dancers just like you become the dancer of your dreams at any age. Today I'm back with 3 tips for more beautiful port-de-bras. This is a very commonly requested question: what to do with my arms? Why don't they look right? What's going on? So we are gonna dive in today. Before we get started, if you're enjoying the videos, make sure you like and subscribe to get more updates right to your feed. Tip number 1, have a wide back, but also a wide chest. Now, a lot of times when we think about having a wide, flat back, what ends up happening is we pull our back and then we get a rounded chest. So this is not a flat back or a flat chest. Here, your back is smaller than your chest. If we go the other direction, then we have a rounded back and a curved chest. So what we want to do is feel the rotation open of the shoulders. We want our shoulder blades flat across our back in the back, and we want to feel that our chest can be just as wide as our back. So we're opening the chest and we're opening the back. Now, while this is going on, we're going to think about the midsection of our body, and we're going to try to think about our sternum and our belly button staying close. So we're not going to let it go back here. We're going to keep the sternum and the belly button close. We don't let that change the wide back and the wide chest. So we keep the wide back, the wide chest, and the front of your body vertically closed. Then the back can be the longest part of your body. The front can be tucked in. We have that wide collarbone and the wide back right across the back. Tip number 2, understand how to manipulate and rotate the individual parts of your arm independently of each other. So we have 3 different joints that we're working with. We have our shoulder joint, we have our elbow, and we have our wrist. Of course, we have all of our finger joints, but we'll cover fingers in another video. So we want to think about how we can rotate and manipulate each of these joints without moving the other one. So what I mean by that, when we move our upper arm, we can move our upper arm including our whole shoulder, but we don't want that because that goes right against tip number 1. You see how when I rotate my upper arm, especially if I'm in low fit, if I rotate it forward, it can take my back with it, and then I have that round back. But I want that nice flat back and wide chest. So what I want to do is set up that posture that we talked about in tip number 1, wide chest, wide back, sternum and belly button close, and then see if you can rotate your upper arm without moving the shoulder joint. This is incredibly detailed work. Think of it like taking your handwriting from cursive to calligraphy. We're learning the exact details and precision of how your arm moves in its socket. So we want to learn how to rotate the upper arm without manipulating the shoulder joint. Then let's move down to the wrist and just playing here. These aren't ballet port-de-bras yet. We're just trying to understand how the parts of our arm move independently of each other. So we have the rotation of the upper arm. Let's move down to the wrist. Can you hold your upper arm still and rotate your forearm? Can you rotate these 2 bones around without having it move your whole arm? So really isolate that motion so that you have that little calibration you can make in your port-de-bras. Moving down to your wrist, can you keep your forearm still and rotate your wrist? There's very subtle movements here, not so much. This joint really moves this direction. So as you start to play with it, you'll notice there's not much twisting action in the wrist without the help of the forearm, but you do have this movement, which can really change the look of your lines when we move that wrist. So we have rotation in the upper arm without the shoulder. We have rotation in the forearm, and we have the linear joint, the hinge joint here on the wrist. Tip number 3, have your elbow just a little bit above your wrist. Okay, where does this go? We want to think about, in our first position port-de-bras, we have the elbow just above the wrist. Very common, we let the elbow be below the wrist, and this is going to break the line. So we use that rotation and we rotate the upper arm so that the elbow can be just above the wrist. Now, not so far that we've included the shoulder joint. See how we've changed the shoulder joint? We only want to rotate the upper arm until we feel the shoulder have to move, and then we've gone enough. And then the elbow is going to be slightly above the wrist. The same goes for second. We don't want the upper arm to be rotated down. but we don't want to rotate it so far that our shoulder joint is included, because we need to keep the shoulders still. Like tip number 1, we need a wide chest and a wide back. So this rotation, this placement of the arm is going to be within a very stable and strong shoulder joint. So from here, start to play with your rotation so you can understand how much you have without the shoulder joint coming with. So shoulder joint, we don't want this, that's too much, because then we get this rounded chest. We want to learn how to keep the shoulder right where it is and rotate the upper arm. So now from here, we can think about where we want the elbow. So we want the elbow just below the shoulder and just above the wrist. So we've rotated the upper arm enough where the pointy part of our elbow is facing back, but without disrupting the shoulder. Now we can think about where we want it to be vertically, where you want that line to be. This is bending up and down in the shoulder joint, not rotating in and out. This is lifting and lowering to get the look and the line that you're going for with your second position. I tend to be around here with my port-de-bras, a little bit out, straight out to the side. Now we can think about how we want to shape the line with our forearm. So from the side view, we have a couple of different directions we can bend the forearm. We can bend the elbow this way. We don't want it too bent, we want it almost all the way straight. From the top view, it's pretty straight. So as we're thinking about this, we're keeping the elbow pretty straight. Then we can think about how we want to rotate that forearm so that we create the finished look of our second position port-de-bras. So we can rotate and we can play, right? So I'm just kind of showing you the full range of motion here, not that we're going to do this in ballet class, but just to feel the range of motion. Now we want to think about rotating that pinky under so that the pinky is visible to the front and we're not getting a blade hand like this, unless we're in allongé, of course, in which case we do want that. But if we're in rounded second, you want that palm to be visible to the front of the room. So we're thinking about all of these axes of rotation. We have the upper arm rotated to create the pointy part of the elbow facing the back of the room, not so high that the shoulder comes with, not so low that it's pointing down. Then we have this axis to move the arm down and up to create the shape you're looking for. Then you have the twisting of the forearm to get your palm where you want it. And finally, to shape the wrist. We don't want the wrist to be bent too much or extended back this way. We want the wrist to follow the line of the forearm. So this is a pretty flat line on the top of the wrist so that we have not a broken or bent line here and not this way. So we find just the right, this is like Goldilocks here, just the right amount of bend to create the shape of the second position port-de-bras. Last thing together, let's apply all of these tips to first port-de-bras. First port-de-bras is the motion when we take the arms from our low fifth or preparatory, sometimes we also call this bras bas position, through our first or fifth en avant and open to our second. So let's start down here in fifth. In low fifth, we have our wide chest, our wide back, and then we think about our elbow just above the wrist. So this is below, this is behind the wrist. We want the elbow in front, but not so far that we round the shoulders. We keep the wide chest and the wide back, and then we rotate the elbows and the upper arm forward within that. Then we have this axis where we can decide how far up we want the arms to go. Then we have the rotation of the wrist, so we can decide where we want our hands to be looking. I like to think if I looked down at my hands, I could see my palms. The view that I'm getting, I'll be looking right from my thumb to my palm when I look down. So I have the wide chest, the elbows rotate forward, and then we want to manipulate the wrist so that this is a straight line and not bent in one way or the other. So we get a nice straight line down for that low fifth. Now we're going to take this exact shape. We're going to think about lifting up the upper arm first, not the wrist first. Upper arm first. Think about your arms moving from your shoulders and from your back so that the upper arm moves first and not the wrist or the fingers. Upper arm moves first. You notice my elbow came up before my wrist so that I ended up here with this last tip, having the elbow above the wrist. And then as I open, I'm going to think about opening my chest and pulling my back a little bit closer together so that I can pull my arms open to second. Now from here, I'm going to keep the rotation of my tricep. It should be the same rotation that you have here. So we've rotated here to get the elbow above the wrist. We keep that rotation and we move it out to second. We don't lose the rotation. If we're here, then we're going to end up here. So if you actively rotate your upper arms here in first, by the time you get to second, that rotation is already going to be established there. From the side view, we find our wide chest, our wide back. We rotate the elbows forward. We find that wrist placement, and then we move from the upper arm like someone went under here. You can try this yourself. Bring your hand underneath and lift up from the upper arm. And then open the hands right across the table until you get out to the side in second. And then right back down, keeping that rotation of the elbow without rounding in the chest. Flat back, flat chest. Elbow above the wrist, and then manipulating those individual rotations of the upper arm, the forearm, how much you want the wrist bent, how much you want the elbow bent. All right, dancers, I hope you had fun with this little tutorial on your port-a-bras. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any more questions for me on your port-a-bras. For more content from me, make sure you subscribe to this channel and visit my website at brocheballet.com, where you can dance with me live on Zoom any day of the week. Until next time, happy dancing.